Chapter 19. The chapters on manumission of slaves. Chapter 1. The Muddabar. It was narrated from Jabir that the Messenger of Allah sold a Muddabar, great Sahih. It was narrated that Jabir bin Abdullah said, "A man among us promised freedom to a slave after his death, and he did not have any property other than him, this slave. So the Prophet sold him, and Ibn Naham, a man from Banu Adi, bought him." It was narrated from Ibn Umar that the Prophet said, "The Muddabar is part of the 1/3 of the estate." Grade Daif. Chapter 2. Ummahatul Avlad. It was narrated from Ibn Abbas that the Messenger of Allah said, "Any man whose slave won and bears him a child, she will be free after he dies." Great Daif. It was narrated that Ibn Abbas said, "Mention was made of the mother of Ibrahim in the presence of the Messenger of Allah, and he said, 'Her son set her free.' Great Daif. Jabir bin Abdullah was heard to say, "We used to sell our slave women and the mothers of our children, Ummahat Avaldina, when the Prophet was still living among us, and we did not see anything wrong with that." Great Sahih. Chapter 3. The Mukatab. Abu Hurairah said that the Messenger of Allah set free whose support is a right upon Allah. The warrior in the path of Allah, the Mukatab seeking to fulfill his manumission, debt, and the one getting married seeking chastity. It was narrated from Amr bin Shu'aib, from his grandfather, that the Messenger of Allah said, "Any slave who has made a contract to buy his freedom for 100 ukiya and pays it all except 10 ukiya, he is still a slave. 1 ukiya is equal to 40 dirham. Grade Hassan. It was narrated from Salama that the Prophet said, "If any one of you women has a mukatab, and he has enough wealth to pay off his contract of manumission, she must veil herself from him." Grade Hassan. It was narrated from Hisham bin Urwa, from his father, about Aisha, the wife of the Prophet, that Barira came to her when she was muktaba, and her masters had written a contract of manumission for 9 ukiya. She, Aisha, said, "If your masters wish, I will pay them that in one sum, and the right of inheritance will belong to me." He said, so she went to her masters and told them about that, but they insisted that the right of inheritance should belong to them. Aisha mentioned that to the Prophet, and he said, "Do it." Then the Prophet stood up and addressed the people. He praised and glorified Allah, SVT. Then he said, What is the matter with some people who stipulated conditions that are not in the Book of Allah, SVT? Every conditions that is not in the Book of Allah, SVT, is invalid, even if there are 100 conditions. The Book of Allah, SVT, is more deserving of being followed, and the conditions of Allah, SVT, are more binding, and the wala belongs to the one who manumits the slave. Great Sahih. Chapter 4, Manumission. It was narrated that Shurabil bin Simt said, I said to Ka'b bin Murrah, tell us a hadith from the Messenger of Allah, but be careful. He said, I heard the Messenger of Allah say, whoever frees a Muslim man, he will be his ransom from the fire. Each of his bones will suffice as a ransom for each of his bones. Whoever frees 2 Muslim women, they will be his ransom from the fire. Each of their 2 bones will suffice as a ransom for each of his bones. Great Daif. It was narrated that Abu Dar said, I said, O Messenger of Allah, which slave is best? He said, the one who is most precious to his master and most valuable in price. Great Sahih. Chapter 5. If a person becomes the master of a maram, then he becomes free. It was narrated from Samura bin Jundub that the Prophet said, whoever becomes the master of maram, relative with whom marriage is not lawful, he becomes free. Great Hassan. It was narrated from Ibn Umar that the Messenger of Allah said, whoever becomes the master of a maram, relative, he becomes free. Great Hassan. Chapter 6. Whoever frees a slave but stipulates that he should serve him. It was narrated from that Safina, Abu Abdurrahman said, Salama freed me but stipulated that I should serve the Prophet as long he lived. Great Hassan. Chapter 7. Whoever frees his share of a slave, it was narrated from Abu Huraira that the Messenger of Allah said, whoever frees his share of a slave or part of his share must pay from his wealth, if he has any wealth, in order to buy the rest of the slave's freedom. If he does not have wealth, then the slave should be asked to work for the price of his freedom, without that causing him too much hardship. Great Sahih. It was narrated from Ibn Umar that the Messenger of Allah said, whoever frees his share of a slave, the price of the slave should be fairly evaluated, and he, the partner who initiated this process, should free him in full by giving the rest of his price to the other co-owners, if he has enough wealth to do so. Otherwise, he will have freed whatever he freed. Great Sahih. Chapter 8. One who frees a slave who has some wealth. It was narrated from Ibn Umar that the Messenger of Allah said, whoever frees a slave who has some wealth, the slave's wealth belongs to him, unless the master stipulates that it will belong to him. Great Sahih. It was narrated from Ishaq bin Ibrahim from his grandfather Umair, who was the freed slave of Ibn Masud, that Abdullah said to him, O Umair, I have set you free in a good way. I heard the Messenger of Allah say, any man who frees a slave and does not say anything about the slave's wealth, it belongs to him, the slave. So tell me, how much wealth do you have? Another chain reports a similar hadith. Great Daif. Chapter 9. Chapter 9. Freeing illegitimate children. It was narrated from Maimuna bint Saad, the freed slave woman of the Prophet, that the Messenger of Allah was asked about illegitimate children. He said, 2 sandals in which I waged jihad are better than freeing an illegitimate child. Great Daif. Chapter 10. One wants to free a man along with his wife. He should start with the man. It was narrated that Aisha had a male slave and a female slave who were married. She said, "O Messenger of Allah, I want to free them both." The Messenger of Allah said, "If you free them, then start with the man before the woman." Grade Hassan.